Summer vacations usually involve relaxation and fun, but what if I told you there is a 21-year-old trader who turned his summer into a financial roller coaster? He transformed $3,500 into a whopping $350,000 only to see it all disappear in the following year. He dedicated himself completely to the way of trading, but there's a catch. What he thought he was trading turned out to be a completely different story. It is my honor to present to you a trader who goes by the name of a barista. 1 year ago he turned 21 with $280,000 and today he turns 22 with only $44,000. And I know what you must be thinking. Oh yeah, he's just a random trust fund kid playing with daddy's money. But that's just miles away from reality. In fact, when he turned 20 he had just $3,500, so all in all he's still well above his break even. But back to the story. It all started in July 2022 when he was bored and had nothing to do. So he thought, what happens if I dedicate myself entirely to trading the Nasdaq with a leverage of 20 until uni starts again? And so he did. From July the 22nd to August the 8th he turned 3.5k into 20k, which is insane in itself, but then by the end of August he reached 100k for the first time in his life. And this must be the only smart decision he's ever made, as he withdrew everything thinking it was just luck. But of course a couple of days later he decided to go back in with 40k, and the day the money arrived he looked at the Nasdaq and thought it was pretty high for the pre-market, so he went all in short. A couple of minutes later CPI came out pretty bad and he ended the day with more than 70k, not even knowing how. He kept going and in the meantime he found out about WallStreetBets and started posting here. By the end of September he was well above 200k and making nonchalantly more than 10k a day. University was about to start on the 3rd of October and he wanted to stop that day. So he decided to do one last trade, YOLOing 350k by shorting Nasdaq futures with a 20x leverage at 2 AM and went to bed. I honestly don't even know how he was able to fall asleep with such an insane YOLO, such insanely high leverage and without a stop loss, but I guess he's just different, because during the night his position reached a peak of more than 400k, but when he woke up he was down by 30%. He thought Nasdaq would go back down, but in the following 2 days it rallied 6%, destroying his portfolio, and in the following days he just kept doing worse and worse. Now I'm guessing you might be a little bit confused about what was he actually trading and how was he able to get that high leverage. He's saying that he was trading futures contracts, but after some exceptional detective work I found that that's just not the case. He was trading something similar to futures, but with some very important differences, and I don't even think he was lying. He just simply didn't know what was he buying, and here is why. First of all, he specified his time zone as CET, which stands for Central European Time. Secondly, he commented something on the Italy subreddit in Italian, so he's definitely from Europe, and I'll explain why that's important in just a moment. But finally, a year ago he said that he uses eToro. Now, do you remember the GameStop era? The stimulus checks when so many new people flooded to WallStreetBets and became interested in investing? If you're from the USA, you most likely started using Robinhood, buying stocks and maybe even options. But if you're from Europe, you most likely wanted to use Robinhood, but it just wasn't available in Europe. At the same time, you were bombarded by hundreds of ads for so-called investing platforms like eToro and Plus 500. So most people, including me, just tried them out thinking they were just like Robinhood and started buying stocks and futures and everything else that was available. But in reality that's not what we were buying. I and a barista were actually buying CFDs. And here's the thing with CFDs, or in long contracts for differences. They are banned in the US and for a good reason. You see, a CFD is just a contract between a buyer, you, and a seller, the brokerage. They essentially allow you to profit from price movement without actually owning the underlying assets. Or in simpler terms, you can bet that an imaginary line, which in this trader's case is moving exactly like Nasdaq futures, is going to move up or down. You can also trade CFDs almost all day, 5 days a week, which makes them perfect to just constantly stare at your positions. Aside from that, CFDs have a set leverage, which is at least in the Nasdaq's case 20-1, and that means you're basically gambling with an insane leverage against the brokerage, against the house. And I'm guessing that sounds like a dream to some of you, but there is another sneaky thing about CFDs that makes them, let's just say, not so friendly to beginners. Overnight funding fees. The brokerage basically charges you a percentage of your leverage trade every single night, and you might not even notice it at first because it's quite small, but it just keeps on stacking up, slowly increasing the losses. And this becomes a real problem when you think you're just buying normal shares, because this overnight funding fee usually shows as a part of your profit or loss on a position, making it extremely hard to notice. Now luckily a barista was day trading and didn't notice this fee, but he still thought he was trading futures, and it's honestly not his fault, because these brokerages make it extremely hard to distinguish whether you're buying an actual stock, index funds, futures or CFDs. For example, when you go to the eToro website and try to buy the Nasdaq, there isn't a single mention of a CFD, not in the name nor the description. But as we all know, you can't trade normal index funds in the after hours and the pre-market, and that led to some users questioning what were they actually trading, but in 5 years they didn't get a good answer. Now in eToro's Sport defense it does say that you're actually buying CFDs, but I had to look really hard to find it. You have to look for a guide to trading indices and scroll to the bottom of the page under the section Why Trade Indices, just to see that the reason why they can be traded all day 5 days a week is because they are available as a CFD. Aside from that, I couldn't find how large an overnight funding fee on eToro is for this specific CFD, but for reference on another platform it's 0.0283%, which means that if you go all in with just $100, you actually buy $2,000 worth of this CFD because of the 20-1 leverage, and then you just constantly lose 57 cents a night. Now in my opinion, it's a bit insane that these brokerages present themselves as normal trading platforms while having a mixture of stocks and CFDs available, not even making it clear which one's which. But maybe that's just me, you know. Now if you've paid attention to this guy's story, you might have noticed that some numbers don't add up. Firstly, he turned just 3.5k into 100k in 1 month, withdrew his money and deposited back 40k, and then it took him just a month to get to 350k, after which his account just fell to $41,453.80. But that would still mean that he had 60k sitting in the bank from the initial 100k gain, meaning that he was still up by about 100k. But sadly that's just not the case, because he later filled in the gaps and said that he also put back in the other 60k. I mean, just the fact that he was somehow lucky enough to get to 350k from just 3.5k by always going all in on the Nasdaq with a leverage of 20 completely blows my mind. Most of his trades were short because he's a gay bear, and most of the profits were done on earnings reports and economic data publications, getting into shorts or longs with different entry points. But despite everything he's gone through, he still thinks it's funny that by now he's handled hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet he has held only a single dollar bill. And if you want to see how this trader turned $1,000 to $100,000 and then lost $65,000 in just 5 days, click on the video that just popped up. If you like my content, make sure to subscribe, and if you have any questions or recommendations, leave them in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.